Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Black-Liberation.Tech podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Renee Jordan, and today I'm going to take a look at a blog post from May 2018, and it's entitled Almost There. Last week, I finished the final required course in my program of study, Writing Qualitative Research Manuscripts. During this week-long intensive reading and writing course, 7 classmates and myself had 30-minute daily individual appointments with our professor, Dr. Janice B. Fernelier, who is also one of my advisors. Every evening, we met for a group session. Long story short, it was a writing revival. It was the best way to finish my coursework and begin my road towards comprehensive exams, research proposal, and dissertation. I'm almost there. As a side note, the writing retreat took place at the Red Top Mountain State Park in Cartersville, Georgia. And so in the blog, I have a view from the cabin porch. So this blog post was what I did not know would be essentially the midpoint of my doctoral studies. I finished my coursework. This was my last class. And so now I was prepping for comprehensive exams, which would help me move towards writing my dissertation proposal, also known as a prospectus. Now, the writing retreat allowed individuals to come and work on their writing. In order to get into the class, we had to submit a proposal as far as what we planned to do so that we had a focus as well as goals listed. So by the end of the writing retreat, we expected to do X, Y, and Z and have a product. So some people had their product as far as their dissertation proposal, or maybe it was their chapter 1 they were working on. Perhaps they were working on their data analysis. Perhaps they were writing their chapter 5, moving from data analysis and the findings into what they had to say about their work as it related to their questions and what it meant. Now, people were in different places and spaces in their doctoral study who attended. Some were at the 9th hour, meaning this was their last chance. They had been in the school for the allotted amount of time, but in essence, there were some people who were pressed for time. There were those who were there and they still had time on the clock, but they indeed wanted to finish. Everybody went in wanting to finish something, and that also included doing other writings in order to move forward with their studies. Now, the reason I say other writings, because I'm one of the people who fell into that category. I found myself needing to write about something else in order to recenter or focus on what it was that I wanted to do moving forward. Up until that point, I'd been working with my dissertation advisor, and I worked with him on his project, an NSF grant. And so now it was the time for me to decide, am I going to simply take a section of the data that I've already collected in order to examine it for my dissertation studies, or was I indeed going to do my own project? And so I knew that I wanted to do my own project, but I also needed to siphon out what that was going to look like for me, because I also became very interested in the work of others, but I did not need to necessarily extend or add on to their work. I needed to determine for myself what I wanted to explore as I move forward. And to circle back, before I move forward, I needed to take a look at where I had been. And so, as I stated in a previous blog, the events that transpired in Mexico City at the roundtable discussion prompted me to write something else. And that writing took shape and form of an autoethnographic work that I worked on while I was at this particular writing retreat. And it was a very emotional time. So I'm definitely not going to read that, or else I won't make it to the end of the podcast. But in short, soon after starting my doctoral program of study, my mom passed away. And so she knew I was in the PhD program. She knew that I was being funded, that I was actually, for once, not only having my school paid for, but they were paying me to go to school. And so this was a great opportunity. She was proud of me. And in that autoethnography, I wrote a letter to my mom talking about my PhD journey. And in that PhD journey, I cited my own work that I did over the course of time, from my master's in public policy, my experience as an educator, how my curiosity pushed me or propelled me forward to examine what was really going on as it related to students' technical skills and digital literacies. I also cited the work that I referenced in those assignments and data that I found that drove me further into an exploration of technology skill and digital literacy development. And while my writing was in the format of a letter that had poetic elements in that it rhymed, I did also have references and resources that you would find in any academic paper. Now, while the format was non-traditional, it did have the documentation and references that are associated with a traditional paper. And so that paper that I ended up with at the end of the writing retreat, I turned around and I submitted it to a roundtable discussion. I actually partnered up with two other young ladies who were at schools that were not mine, and we, as a result of our explorations of African philosophies, were able to discuss experiences from different standpoints in that roundtable discussion. I talked about my PhD journey as a Black girl, if you will, and the other two talked about their experiences with the use of African philosophies and doing work in countries in Africa. I'll just leave it like that. But I won't sit here and read my story or our abstract to you, but I want to encourage you to take the time to not only write in order to get ready for your dissertation in terms of the introduction, the literature review, but also take a look at how you can write in order to inform the scholarship in your field about what is happening. And that can include your story. So take a look at those who write autoethnographic works, find out the different methods of going about doing an autoethnography. Explore, see if it's something that will work for you. Taking on that writing assignment during the writing retreat was liberating. It made me say, hey, I'm Renee, and I've been on this journey longer than I've been at this school. And so it's something that I want to finish, and it's something that I want to be proud of when I'm done. And these are the things that I learned along the way. These are the breadcrumbs, if you will, of my work. This is how I got to where I am and where I hope to go as I move forward in my own research. I won't go into detail about what the others wrote, but there were some personal stories told during the process. Now, that's helpful because it helps to humanize the experience of being a student. It is possible to disconnect from your work and say, I have to do this in order to get what I want. But by humanizing it and saying, this is a personal experience, I'm taking time out away from my family, my loved ones, in order to do this work. I'm blocking out time in order to push this work forward, time that I will never regain, time that cannot be redistributed. It allows you to sit with the importance of the work for yourself. What does it mean to you to finish? What does it mean to you to earn this degree? What does it mean to you to do research? Is it personal? To me, getting a PhD was a very personal experience. It wasn't just passing through. I had to be able to sit with myself and explain what it was that I was doing in a way that allowed me to see the value for myself. And that required me to carve out time and dedicate it to writing. For some, maybe writing comes easy and they're able to just flow. For others, it may take a lot of starting and stopping and starting and stopping. What I've learned to do is to write. That is the most important part. Now, some of the writings that I completed during my doctoral studies did not always get turned in. They were not always submitted to a professor. They were not always submitted to a conference. They were not always submitted to a journal for consideration. But I did write. And sometimes I would write in my notes on my iPhone. I would write about what I wanted my dissertation to include in terms of the participants who I would reach out to, different questions that I was interested in asking. If possible, can I interview this person? Other things included just writing out my frustrations. Whenever I got stuck and frustrated and said, you know what, this isn't fair. Or if I got stuck and said to myself, you know what, I don't like this, then I would write about that too. And I would write it so that I could get my words out on paper and not be intimidated by a blank page, but know that I can fill it with information that is of value to me. As a result of all that writing, I had a lot to talk about when it was my turn for my comprehensive exams, when it was my turn to write my prospectus or my dissertation proposal, when it was my turn to write my dissertation. I had plenty of words, so much so that I had to cut out many in order to make it succinct and get to the point and finish. Outside of the writing retreat, I also had to carve out time to write. That meant taking half days, using my vacation time to leave work 2 hours early for 2 weeks at a time to make sure that I was dedicating time to sit in front of my computer and write. And I did not hold myself to going in any particular order. That can be frustrating. If you find that, oh, I want to work on the literature review, work on that. If you find that, oh, I want to work on my methodology, I want to talk about what steps I'm going to take. I'm going to talk about how I'm going to go about collecting the data, who I'm going to seek out in order to get people to interview. I want to write about, oh, this part of the introduction. I need to talk about why this study is important. So what? What is the importance? I want to talk about that now. Don't be afraid to go out of order. The paper that you're writing is not going to tell anyone that you're skipping around, but you want to make sure that you do get it filled in. It's okay to have an outline, but fill it in and fill it in the order that feels most comfortable for you. If it is causing you pain, think about, do you really need it in there? Is it that important? If it's causing you pain, is it worth it? Does it really have to be in there? Now, some people might not be emotional about writing papers, but I found that sometimes it was just painful just to be like, why do I have to do this? Or why do I have to try and resolve this? Can it be left out and therefore not be painful? Think about it. Does it really have to be in there? Another important reason to just write is that creativity can come out as you write. You might find that some of the things that you were writing as a side note, a personal note, or for the sake of, may find its way into your final work. What that looks like, who can tell? Only you can. It will take you writing it out before you can consider where it could possibly fit. Another aspect of the writing retreat that also helped cultivate creativity as well as create a nice environment to write in was the fact that we were in nature, in cabins. We had to bring hard drives with us that contained the articles that we were going to reference because the internet was existent, but you wouldn't want to have to do the searches while you were there. You would want to have the documents that you were going to reference, use, read on your computer or on an external hard drive that you could access while out in nature. So the nature brought a peaceful environment, but you also had to be mindful that technology might not be as fast if you were relying on Wi-Fi in order to get what you needed done. In addition to meeting with our professor for 30 minutes every day, we also had writing partners that would allow us to talk to someone else and have a peer review session, if you will, on our progress. The peers also offered an opportunity to serve as a sounding board in that you were able to ask somebody, is this making sense? Is this a coherent thought? Am I making the connections that are necessary here? Am I missing anything? Are there any holes in my argument? Or I'm stuck. What can I do? As I stated earlier, this last class marked the midpoint of my doctoral studies. And I say the midpoint because that was May 2018. I started the program in June of 2015. And now, at that point, I didn't know, I still had 4 years ahead of me. Wow. Whew. 4 years before I finished. Does it take everybody 7 years to finish their PhD? No, that's the amount of time it took for me to finish. And I'm glad that I took the time. I made good use of the time. I maximized the opportunities that I had during my doctoral studies. I not only completed my coursework, but I had great opportunities to engage in conferences as a presenter, as a chair, as a discussant, as a panel moderator, as a reviewer, and more. I had the opportunity to do research in class that was based on the data that I did with my professor. And I was able to do so by taking a look at what interests me the most. So while I collected data for everyone, I analyzed the data based upon my interest in technology skill and digital literacy development. For those of you who don't know, comprehensive exams is your opportunity to demonstrate what you've learned over the course of your coursework. And it's the opportunity for your committee to decide whether or not you have what it takes to move forward and start the proposal writing process. With all that being said, I want to encourage you to carve out time to write. If there's a writing retreat opportunity, I want to encourage you to seek it out and actually go. But don't just show up with a blank page. Show up with a plan. What are your goals for that writing retreat? What do you want to accomplish? What product do you want to have by the end of that writing retreat? Is it a paper that you're going to look to publish? Is it a paper that you're going to look to submit to a conference? Is it your chapter 1, chapter 2, or chapter 3 of your dissertation? Or perhaps you need to work on your data analysis. And it might even be your chapter 5, your discussion. Now, different doctoral programs have different formats, requirements, or flexibility when it comes to writing a dissertation. My particular program had 2 options. You could either write a 5-chapter dissertation or a 2-chapter dissertation. Go ahead and look that up for yourself and see what options you might be interested in if you are considering a doctoral program. Also, when you're looking at the doctoral program, see what their requirements are and if they provide that level of flexibility. It's important that you persist when you are tasked with a large writing assignment, such as a thesis and a dissertation. It requires showing up at your computer. It requires dedicated time to focus and write. Now, once again, some people, they're just able to type away, and it just comes out no problem, easy peasy. But for those of us who actually need to focus and sit and set time and space aside in order to focus and write, make sure you do that. It can be helpful and you can get it done. It's possible. And while you're doing all of that, make sure you're taking care of yourself, getting plenty of rest, giving yourself time to relax, giving yourself time to do absolutely nothing. Just don't tell anybody because they're going to think that you're supposed to be doing something. But take time out for yourself to recharge and rejuvenate so that the next time you sit at your computer, you are not stressed out, but you can sit and either work on your writing assignment or write about something else to help get the creative juices flowing. Once again, thank you for listening to another episode of the Black-Liberation.Tech podcast. I am your host, Dr. Renee Jordan. Please feel free to like, subscribe, and share, as well as rate and review the podcast to help it become more discoverable. And until next time, bye-bye.